Even after emptying arsenals and loading defense enterprises to the limit, the USA and the EU have not met the needs of the AFU. Nevertheless, they are trying to continue their assistance. To this end, the West is using shells confiscated from other countries and shifting military production to Ukraine itself. The armed conflict in Ukraine has reached a stalemate. The White House, the Department of Defense, and the US State Department have said that most of the US funds allocated to help the ally have been exhausted. If the situation does not change, the combat readiness of the United States Armed Forces will be undermined. Against this background, Washington recently handed over to Kiev more than 1 million rounds of ammunition confiscated from Tehran in order to make up for the ammunition shortage in the AFU. Meanwhile, voices are growing louder in Europe calling for an end to military support for Ukraine. US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said that most of the funds allocated to support Ukraine had been exhausted and that some long-term programs designed to help the ally acquire new weapons and other materials had been effectively frozen. On the 4th of October, US Central Command released a statement saying that shortly before that, it had sent the Ukrainian armed forces about 1 million rounds of ammunition confiscated from Iran. Military observer Xiao Yunlin believes that although disagreements and contradictions in the USA over the issue of military aid to Ukraine are becoming more and more prominent, but on the whole, Joe Biden's government will still stick to its supportive course. The expert emphasized that the ruling Democratic Party and its opponents from the Republican Party are at odds over aid to Ukraine. In addition, against the background of the US domestic debt crisis and the worsening refugee problem, the American people are beginning to think that Washington can no longer provide Kiev with the same assistance as before. Ukraine now needs missiles and air defense systems. Xiao believes that by providing the ally with ammunition confiscated from Iran, the United States wants to demonstrate its unwavering support. Opposition to military aid to Ukraine is growing in Europe. Earlier, Poland said it would no longer support the ally, and Slovakia and Germany have recently signaled that they are tired of the conflict. Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that sooner or later the USA, Europe and other powers will get tired of pumping weapons into Ukraine, which will lead to an internal split in the West. In Xiao Yunlin's opinion, the Russian side strikes psychological blows with such statements. These are its acts of war of public opinion. But in the long term, it may turn out that Moscow is not just stirring up the atmosphere. As the expert noted, even if Poland, Hungary and Slovakia work at full capacity on the issue of military aid, their contribution will be relatively limited. However, the very fact that these states have opposed a transfer of weapons and equipment to Ukraine could deepen the crack in the Western camp, both on the battlefield and in the matter of the functioning of society. The Kiev authorities rely entirely on the support of foreign allies. If the assistance stops, Ukraine could descend into chaos, he said. According to other sources, UK Defence Secretary Grant Shapps recently said that he had discussed with the country's military commanders the deployment of the first British troops to Ukraine to implement a training programme for AFU soldiers. Subsequently, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak clarified the defence chief's words, describing them as simple indications that we might be able to hold exercises in Ukraine in the future. Xiao Yunlin analysed these contradictory statements. The expert believes that London is probing the situation with a balloon to see how the world reacts. The UK has taken the lead in many areas of military assistance to Ukraine. It has sent tanks, taken on the training of AFU pilots, and provided the ally with Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Xiao Yunlin explained, going forward, more Western powers will train the Ukrainian military. They may be doing it already now, but not publicly, and are deliberately publishing relevant information to soften the harsh response of the world's countries. Localization could be a trend in the issue of Western aid to Ukraine. The Secretary General of NATO and the defense ministers of Britain and France recently visited the Ukrainian capital. They emphasize the need to encourage the production of weapons in the country itself. Xiao Yunlin believes that under the conditions of a protracted conflict, training military personnel and producing weapons and equipment in Ukraine is an inevitable trend, which the USA and other Western powers will seek as part of their support for the ally. The expert stressed that although at present the industrial capacities of the US and European countries in Ukraine are not sufficiently large, the expert stressed that although the industrial capacities of the US and European military enterprises have reached their limits, they are still unable to meet the needs of the AFU. The production of weapons in Ukraine is, on the one hand, beneficial for the military-industrial complex. It will be able to make good money on it. On the other hand, the government will also profit from it. Moreover, such a decision could lead to a significant reduction in production costs, and weapons and equipment will be much easier to maintain. In my opinion, the localization of Western aid in Ukraine is a trend of the current crisis and a way to adapt to the protracted hostilities